going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's Dark Host, and today we got another reaction video looking at some of the craziest deep sea creatures at every depth of the ocean. This is by, trust me, bro. He's pretty. A lot of you probably know him. Oh, sorry, but yeah, let's get into it.
The
Oh,
creepiest
Jesus.
deep sea creatures at every depth. I think at this point, most people would agree that at its core, the ocean is simply a vessel for terror. The sheer size, anonymity, and emptiness of the ocean are reasons alone to be terrified of it. And quite frankly, it is the closest thing we have to a void on this planet. However, this void is not empty. And in this video, we are going to describe the craziest sea creatures that we know of at every depth of the ocean. Starting tame, but only getting creepier as we dive deeper into the ocean blue. The epipelagic zone. The epipelagic zone is also known as the sunlight zone, and that's because it's basically the only section of the ocean that receives ample sunlight. The epipelagic is only a measly 200 meters deep, and it's for that reason that part of the epipelagic zone is also known as the photic zone, because this is the only part of the ocean where photosynthesis can take place for ocean plants. For context, about 90% of the world's known marine animals live within the epipelagic zone. And for that reason, there is plenty of sea creatures to talk about. Although nothing as strange as the things we're going to get into in the deeper depths of this video. Now, interestingly, unrelated from sea creatures themselves, the epipelagic actually serves an important role on weather and climate by absorbing the energy from the sun, gradually releasing it over time, and even globally redistributing the energy as heat through the wind's effects on the ocean and ocean currents themselves. And this plays an important role in ecosystems, weather, and global climate as a whole. But enough about that dumb stuff. Let's get into the creepy critters that exist within this zone. As I mentioned, basically all of the marine life we know about lives in this zone. So the entries I could talk about are endless. I could mention basically any monster that's been on Jeremy Wade's River Monsters. I could discuss rare breeds of shark. I could even discuss Piranha 3DD. But even though the list of options is bountiful, this video is finite, which is why I boiled it down to a more known example. Just to start things off, relatively tame. This little guy may look like a rock, but he's actually a fish known as the stonefish. And he is both ugly and terrifying. And a little cool, but that's besides the point. As weird and alien as this fish may look, it's actually possibly the most normal looking fish on this entire list. While the stonefish may look like a deep sea creature, it actually hates the depth and lives typically only within 0 to 30 meters of the ocean's surface. And while they can be found in depths as deep as 50 meters, they are typically never found in depths beyond that, making them a, relatively speaking, shallow fish. And that theory is also kind of bolstered by the fact that stonefish only date rich people, which in my opinion is quite shallow. But gold digging aside, the stonefish has some rather unique attributes that made it worthy of this list. Besides the obvious, looking weird, or at least like a stone. For starters, the stonefish has a rather unique natural camouflage that it uses to its advantage. The stonefish is typically found in rocky seabeds, coral reefs, or in shallow lagoons, and in these locations, it will nestle its body as deeply as it can into or onto the surface and then cover the rest of its body, either in sand or mud, to blend in as much as it can with the environment, leaving only its back exposed. And when the stonefish is in its hidden position, it is pretty convincing. And this is bad for a few reasons, most notably for people. Because while the stonefish could live anywhere from 0 to 50 meters below the ocean surface, they are most frequently seen by people in very shallow, low tide zones and near reef flats. And you know which other animal likes very shallow, low tide reef flats? Humans on vacations with snorkels. And when a hidden stonefish encounters an unassuming tourist, things get a lot worse than just being creeped out. And while looking like this and living under a rock may be creepy enough, the third and final attribute about the stonefish is by far what makes it most notable and terrifying. The reason why the stonefish purposely leaves its back exposed when it is hiding is because its back contains 13 razor-sharp dorsal fin spines, and they are full of the most potent fish toxin in the world. Now, you might be asking yourself, how do people get stung or stabbed? And the truth is, the stonefish is basically a booby trap. And that's because when a stonefish is stepped on or has pressure applied to its back,
it's a blue venom that comes out of the tips of their spine on the back.
The skin that is sheathing the spines is pushed down the spine,
just like that. That's
exposing
exactly
the
what it
needle-like
looks
spine,
like.
allowing it to penetrate whatever is applying pressure to it. And when I say needle-like, I mean it. Not only is the spine extremely sharp, it is also basically a hollow tube, and it uses that tube to deliver the toxin directly into your muscles, skin, fat, whatever is touching it. And once contact has been made and the toxin is now within you, the real party starts. Immediately after you are stung by the stonefish, you are met with a sense of intense burning, followed by a plethora of potential symptoms, including, but not limited to, nausea, vomiting, fever, muscle spasms, hypertension, and in some cases, seizures and even death. Now, if you've been watching Trust Me Bro videos for a while, you've probably asked yourself, how does bro come up with these crazy ideas? And honestly, I wish I could tell you where they came from. However, what I can tell you is where you came from, with the help of today's video sponsor, MyHeritage. With the MyHeritage DNA test, you can learn all about your DNA, discover your family history, and explore your geographic origins. And now, using my code, you can for 30 to 90 minutes to allow the heat-liable protein to break down. In most cases, this is enough to subside the sting, but in severe cases, anti-venom is also available, if you can get it. Now, if you're one of those people that are saying, well, I can just avoid this because I'll just stay out of the water. Easy. Not so fast. The stonefish can actually live for up to 24 hours out of water. Meaning that if you're just on a beautiful beach and happen to see a weird-looking stone, you may also end up with a very bad stonefish sting on land. But yeah, the stonefish is crazy and creepy and scary enough, but we are only just getting started. And we're still in a part of the ocean where the sun does in fact shine. So with that, let's move on. The mesopelagic zone. The mesopelagic zone is also known as the Twilight Zone, and that's because this is the part of the ocean where vampires live. Jokes aside, it's called the Twilight Zone because this is where light goes to die. The Twilight Zone of the ocean ranges from 200 meters in depth to 1,000 meters in depth.
Oh, okay,
meaning there's quite a bit of variation in light distribution in this zone, as well as a lot more ocean to discuss. Some sunlight is visible at the top of the mesopelagic or Twilight Zone. However, one distinct characteristic of the Twilight Zone is the lack of conditions that allow for photosynthesis, meaning no plants, no phytoplankton, no vampires, I guess. And for fish and marine creatures, this means that life just got a lot more complicated. And gross. And I'm not just talking about how these fish look. If you look at the footage on screen right now of the Twilight Zone, obviously while illuminated by the camera, you almost see these particles that look like snow floating around. And this phenomenon is literally known as marine snow. And it consists basically solely of organic matter from the previous ocean layer. And by organic particles, of course, I mean fecal pellets and dead material, aka fish poop and dead fish parts. And while just being surrounded by death and poop might sound bad enough, believe it or not, in the Twilight Zone, for many fish, it's this consistent poop snow that actually facilitates life. Because this, for many fish, is their source of sustenance. So if you were curious what a creature would look like that never saw sunlight and had a diet almost exclusively of poo, well, you're about to find out very soon. The mesopelagic zone is also the first zone of the ocean that is considered deep sea. And with that comes, of course, deep sea creatures. Possibly some of the most horrifying things roaming this planet. In the first section, I only gave one example. But for this section, I want to discuss a few more cuddly, creepy creatures. Because this is where things really begin to get juicy. One of the biggest general genres of fish that exist in the Twilight Zone can best be explained as gelatinous zooplankton. And they come in many different shapes and sizes, some examples on screen now. And the common denominator amongst all of them is that they are basically at the will of the ocean's currents. They have no way of moving around, and they just move where the ocean pushes them and eat what they can. One specific type of deep sea creature that has a similar method of movement and also a similar look, but is not the same whatsoever, is a type of creature known as a sophonophore. And put as simply,
sophonophore. I'm just trying to examine the fuck that is, bro. It just looks like a fucking hairy worm. Oh, fuck.
As possible, sophonophores are extremely complex creatures that, while they look like one creature, they are actually a colony of organisms that are reliant and dependent on each other, all living in the body of one organism, essentially. Sophonophores are for the most part considered zooids. And zooids are multicellular units that all develop from a single fertilized egg. And from that egg, combine to create a functional colony that then reproduces with itself and continues to grow and grow. And because of this,
Ew.
siphonophores have been able to grow to
That's weird.
crazy lengths. And there's even been recorded siphonophore that was up to 50 meters long, making it the longest
Ugh.
recorded animal on this planet ever seen. Longer
Holy
than a blue
shit.
whale, longer than, well, anything. And while siphonophores may just look like passive drifters, they are actually predatory carnivores. Meaning
What?
that they are intentionally hunting, or they or it, I don't even know what to call it, because it's basically a conjoined twin that has, well, 20 to infinity twins all combined to each other. Because although this is a colony of different organisms, all of these organisms are genetically identical, making it kind of hard to categorize. And the scientific literature on siphonophores is complex
fuck?
to say the least. Like, just imagine, instead of you having your body, each one of your organisms was technically a separate organism working together, which
Oh,
I guess is
hell.
technically the
That'd be
case.
weird.
But in the case of siphonophores, that is what they are. Every zooid that makes up a siphonophore is genetically identical, but each individual zooid, or part of the siphonophore, basically has a specialized function, kind of like organs in our body. Some of the zooids in the siphonophores sting, some digest, some do nothing, and some even have bioluminescence, making them glow in the deep sea environment, which is
Dope.
a pretty common characteristic at this
In
depth.
deep sea,
But yeah,
yeah.
siphonophores are a bizarre collection of organisms that make one organism, and each part of the organism does its own specialized task. And while that alone is interesting, it's impossible to deny that siphonophores look extremely creepy, and the fact that they can get up to 50 plus
Yeah,
meters
50
long
meters
is
is fucking-
nothing short of terrifying, especially when you
I don't even
consider that
know
they
what-
are
like, if you
predatory
saw that in
hunters,
the
not
ocean,
just
I don't even know what you
passive beings.
think that is, bruh. Like, I don't even know what my first thought would even fucking be if I saw that. Like, I wouldn't think it's some living thing. But now I know.
But taking a
So-
break from the jelly boys, we also have some more truly terrifying creatures to discuss. For starters, this guy. Sorry for the jump scare.
The fuck
This
is that
is
thing?
the snipe eel, and it can grow up to 1 to 2 meters long, which is just lovely, isn't it? The most notable characteristic of the snipe eel is its jaw. It's very skinny and almost
Hi there, bunny. What's up? There's a baby bunny right by my door. Do you finally make it out? Yeah. What's up, buddy? What's up? And it just ran under my fucking bed. How long is a meter? I think it's like 3.43 feet or something like that. I gotta get this fucking baby bunny out of the house, bro. Yeah. 150-foot one. That's fucking wild. Bro, it's under my bed, bro. Like, I mean, theoretically, I could just shut my door and it wouldn't be able to get out. I'm actually kind of glad it's in here. Because now it's not getting out. Come here, little bunny. Let me get you out of my house. go? Where'd you go? He's over there. Watch out. Oh. Bruh. Mr. Bunny. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Bruv. Where did it go? Come. What the fuck, bruh? Where the fuck did it go? Bruh, what? Interesting. Well, it's somewhere in my room, so.
Needle-like. And in most cases, the upper jaw curves upward and the lower jaw may either stay straight or even curve downward as well. The reason why the snipe eel is called the snipe eel is because its jaw represents the beak of the bird with the same name, the snipe. And snipe eels themselves are also carnivorous hunters. And this is what an x-ray looks like. But in case that wasn't scary enough, this is the dragonfish. And I apologize for the second jump scare. The dragonfish, interestingly, could kind of live in most deep sea parts of the ocean, and they have been found anywhere from 500 meters deep to 5,000 meters deep. But I wanted to talk about them now because they are scary, and I want scary now. Fortunately, unlike the snipe eel, the dragonfish is relatively small. They can be anywhere from 6 to 10 inches, which, if you ask me, is way too big, and they are expert predators. They have enormous jaws that are filled with razor-sharp teeth, and they also have a rather unique upper jaw that allows them to open their mouth more than 100 degrees, which, similar to a snake, allows them to consume extremely large prey. Prey so big, in fact, that it is literally 50% bigger than they are, which almost doesn't make sense, so I'm assuming they're like stretchy, which to me only makes it worse. Scary and stretchy are not a good mix. Sexy.
Oh, hell no.
And stretchy, that's a different story. Just look at Mrs. Incredible. But putting that aside for now, let's next discuss the goblin shark, another disgusting looking deep sea creature. The goblin shark is a very rare type of shark that only lives in the deep sea. And in some cases, it is even called a living fossil because it is the last remaining relative of a family of sharks that have a lineage that date back over 125 million years. And honestly, I believe it because this shark literally looks like something that was still in pre-development and was dropped way too early. It's basically an EA game, but that's beyond the point. The goblin shark is also pink and 3 to 4 meters long. And if the pictures weren't obvious enough, The goblin shark's creepy claim to fame is its flat, pointed out snout and its unusual looking jaw that it will shoot out of its mouth when it's feeding. And I think it goes without saying that the goblin shark is of course a carnivorous predator. It is also something I would never want to see in person. One cool fact about them though is the fact that their snout is covered in electroreceptors that sense minute electric fields produced by nearby fish. And it's that attribute of their snout that allows them to be effective deep sea hunters in very low light environments when they are essentially moving off field. But quickly before we
that is definitely some like ancient fucking like ability, bro.
move on to the next depth of the ocean, I quickly wanted to give a bit of a palate cleanse and also talk about something that's not so creepy but also more so cool before we get really creepy. And this is a creature known as the blood belly comb jelly. This fish is
I think these guys are called the vampire jellies.
actually known as nature's disco ball because of how the bioluminescence on it works. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to a cool deep sea creature that I learned about while researching for this video. But let's move on. The bathypelagic zone. The bathypelagic zone is also known as the midnight zone, and that is because at this point in the ocean, it is pitch black top to bottom. And when I say top to bottom, I mean it because this part of the ocean is vast. It ranges from 1,000 meters deep to 4,000 meters deep. That is literally 4 kilometers deep into the ocean, making it 4 times bigger and 4 times deeper than the Twilight Zone we just discussed, which in itself already had some extremely creepy creatures. But at the bathypelagic zone and beyond, it only gets weirder. For context, the bathypelagic zone is so deep, in fact, that massive factors like the sun, waves, or tides have basically little to no impact on life in this area, making it, like I mentioned earlier, essentially a void. No light, no sound, only immense pressure and loneliness. And it's because this part of the ocean is so isolated and so unaffected by other factors that it's believed that this part of the ocean has remained relatively similar for the past millions of years. Meaning that the bathypelagic zone could be one of our only direct windows into prehistoric life that still exists today, which admittedly is pretty cool. I think that this is an important time to state that the deeper we go in this video, the less that we know about that specific area. And that's simply because the pressures at these depths are immense. And for that reason, knowledge, research, and even time spent at these depths is extremely limited. Each deeper level of the ocean only becomes more mysterious and elusive and unknown than the last. Which is why I'm once again mentioning that the creatures I'm listing are only the creatures that we're aware of. And at the depths we're now exploring, there's a very good chance that there is a lot of crazy, creepy creatures we have no idea about. But let's discuss the ones we do know about, starting with this monstrosity, known as the Greenland shark. And these sharks are no ordinary sharks by any means. For starters, they are known to live for centuries. Typically,
don't we know more about space than we know about our ocean? Because we really haven't been able to explore fully all the way to the bottom of the ocean.
Anywhere from 200 to 500 years old, making it the longest living vertebrae on Earth. But it's not only the lifespan of this shark that is long, it physically is also massive. And that's because it suffers from a condition that is common this deep in the ocean, a condition known as deep sea gigantism. And it's a relatively common occurrence this deep in the water. And it also makes creatures at this depth multiples larger than their more shallow counterparts. And the Greenland shark specifically regularly grows bigger than great white sharks, with the capacity to grow up to 7 meters or even beyond. Which to me is super interesting. It almost seems counterintuitive because if you are a creature that is living in a place where food is so scarce and you're also living in an environment that has such immense pressure, it would seem like the opposite effect would happen. You know, creatures would get smaller, not have the tendency to get gigantic. But that's beyond the point. Sharks that live at this depth live very different lives than sharks in shallower waters. And that's specifically because food is scarce, there is no light, and for that reason, hunting styles are completely different. The Greenland shark, for example, much like many predators at this depth in the ocean, uses a sit and wait tactic to conserve energy. They don't swim quickly or much at all, and it is really their laziness that is part of their survival, which is a direct page out of Roderick's Tips for Life if you really think about it. But moving on to our next creature, we have a
Anglerfish.
classic, the anglerfish. Many people know the look, but not many people know the lore. Anglerfish famously have a bioluminescent lure on the front
Yep,
of their
lure
face. This
fishing.
lure actually contains bacteria that is bioluminescent, and it uses its bioluminescence to attract prey in the deep waters. Anglerfish also have massive mouths that they can open to extreme widths to swallow nearly any prey it finds, and it can also stretch its entire body to consume prey that is twice its size, which is a requirement for living at a place where food is so scarce. You have
That's
to be able to
wild.
eat anything and everything you find. We all know that anglerfish look terrifying, but one of the freakiest things about the anglerfish is, well, how it gets freaky. It is so uncommon for two anglerfish to meet up at deep sea depths that male anglerfish have actually evolved to essentially just become female ball sacks. And I'm not even kidding. Every anglerfish you've
What?
ever seen with a bioluminescent lure is a female. Male anglerfish have no bioluminescent bulb. They are tiny, but they do have massive eyes and large nostrils, both specifically to help them seek out and find female anglerfish. Once a male anglerfish is able to find a female anglerfish, the male anglerfish will use pincers in its jaw to attach to the female anglerfish, and once it is fully attached, it will live there for the rest of its life.
I mean,
Not only living off of the female, but
probably will
becoming
have to,
essentially
yeah.
part of the female. Once the male is
You don't
attached
have
to the
to-
female, they combine their circulatory systems, and the male's body goes from being tiny to non-existent and shrivels up into a ball sack. And the entire purpose of this ball sack is to provide the female anglerfish with sperm to reproduce. And the shriveled sack that was once the male anglerfish is just balls that is living off of her blood and food. That entire process is crazy for multiple reasons.
But baby,
Primarily
I
because
appreciate
men
it.
literally
Thank
have no
you
other
again.
purpose than to try to hunt down and become part of the women, but it's also crazy to see how nature always finds a way. And if you really think about it, male anglerfish might be the most dedicated stay-at-home dads. The abyssopelagic zone. The abyssopelagic zone is exactly as it sounds. It's an abyss and ranges from
Can you stay over there, please? Can I please catch you and bring you outside finally? Get you out of my house? Just stay over there. Stay. Need this bunny to stay. Probably, yeah, after this, yeah. That's where it's been running to. You cheeky little bugger, bro. It's been running behind my fucking dresser. Come here. I'm back. Little baby rabbit.
4,000 to 6,000
Took it
meters
outside.
deep. It continues the trend of being a dark, barren wasteland. And for many parts in the ocean, the abyssopelagic zone is the deepest depth the ocean gets to, meaning that it includes many creatures that live on the ocean floor. And it's also important to note that the ocean floor is one of the
probably an
most
open window
plentiful
or door.
ecosystems in the entire world. There is more ocean floor than there is forests, deserts, and mountains combined. And with how plentiful this ecosystem is, there is not a shortage of creepy crawlers, with one literal example being the giant sea spider. Giant and spider are two words you never want in the same sentence, and somehow deep sea only makes it worse. Interestingly, the giant deep sea spider kind of varies in size, and some regular sea spiders can be as small as a grain of sand, and some giant ones can be as large as a house cat. Regardless, they both conduct the same hobbies. They both crawl along the sandy ocean floor, and they both prey on soft-bodied animals, using its straw-like limbs to stab into its victims and suck their nutrients and literal insides out of their body and into the spider. The largest types of sea spiders live at the North and South Pole, and not only experience deep-sea gigantism, but also polar gigantism, another strange deep-sea phenomenon that scientists don't yet understand. Interestingly, sea spiders are typically considered parasites and not predators. And that's because when they feed on these soft-bodied creatures that they stab their legs into and suck the life out of, they don't always kill their prey. They'll just suck what they want and then go on with it, not really caring if their victim lives or dies. Oh, and these sea spiders don't only use their legs to stab into their prey, they also use their legs to breathe, with the entirety of their legs being filled on the inside with intestinal pouches that are used to absorb oxygen through the legs' tubes, basically utilizing most of the spider's surface area, which is, of course, its legs. If you're like me and don't like spiders on land, then I'm sure you're pleased to know that they only get worse at the ocean floor, meaning that maybe we don't have it so bad up here after all. But in case giant sea spiders weren't bad enough, what about giant sea squids that basically look like spiders? I'm talking about the big fin squid, possibly one of the scariest looking creatures on this entire list. The first ever big fin squid sighting was in 1988. And since then, there have only been about 20 recorded sightings, making this creature exceedingly rare. However, out of the ones that have been seen and documented, the longest big fin squid that we know of was more than 20 feet long. But because we know about deep sea gigantism and, of course, polar gigantism, it is very likely that much larger big fin squid are out there that we just haven't seen yet. Scientists believe that the big fin squid uses its tentacles like a web to catch its prey, or will drag its tentacles across the ocean floor to try to scoop up prey almost like a net. However, neither of these are fully confirmed. And such is the case for most of the information about the big fin squid because sightings have been so few and far between, and those sightings have been short-lived, meaning that while we know this creature exists, very little about them is known, in my opinion, making them that much more terrifying. As if their whole alien look wasn't bad enough. Like, I swear that every horror movie that has an apocalyptic giant creature that ends the world, it looks like this thing. And it turns out we don't even need horror movies. We just need something that already exists at the bottom of the ocean. The Hadopelagic Zone. The Hadopelagic Zone is the final frontier when it comes to Earth's oceans. It exists in depths from 6,000 meters to 11,000 meters, which, of course, is the deepest depth on the entire Earth, and is located in the Marianas Trench. The Hadopelagic Zone consists almost solely of trenches, and at the very bottom of the Hadopelagic Zone, there have been less people than there has been on the surface of the moon, meaning that this area is extremely unexplored and extremely unknown. The pressure in this zone of the ocean is more than 800 times greater than it is on the surface of the Earth. However, stunningly, life still finds a way to exist, seemingly against all odds. And I say this because for the longest time, scientists believed that it was simply impossible for life to exist in such a cold, dark, and high-pressure environment. But when researchers and scientists were finally able to make the expedition to these extremely deep depths, they were met not with nothing, but with life. One of the most notable examples is the snailfish. And interestingly, at least in my opinion, the snailfish is one of the least creepy entries on this entire list. But at this point in the video, I'm going to give them the pass, partially because I'm kind of over forcing a negative bias when in reality all of this is so fascinating and amazing, but also because the sheer fact that they even exist in a place where an armored tank would implode itself and a human would instantly die is shocking enough and qualifies them to be an entry on this list, because it's creepy and crazy how this creature is even able to exist. It makes you wonder and think, if creatures could live at the bottom of their ocean, where else could creatures and animals be that we aren't aware of? Potentially looking up, not down. But that's a different video. Focusing back in on the snailfish have a gelatinous, scaleless body that almost looks delicate and jello-like. And that is by design. Their soft structure is what allows them to live at such immense depths. And these fish, for that reason, don't even have bones. They simply have cartilage-like structures that have been adapted to this pressure. Like many other creatures at this depth, the snailfish has skin that is almost entirely transparent. And while they may look almost kind of cute, the snailfish is also a predator and uses a suction feeding method to catch prey that is either walking on or hiding in the soft sediment on the bottom of these trenches. But like some of the other creatures we've discussed, it's the lack of time and experience we've been able to have with these creatures that leave us, once again, with a limited knowledge. But if nothing else, the sheer existence of the snailfish just goes to show that life always finds a way. And even when scientists are
I'd rarely doubt there's anything at the bottom of the ocean. Honestly. Anymore, at least.
convinced that something is impossible or that life simply could not live in a certain place, life just ends up there. Further proving that whoever created all of this has a sense of humor, or at least loves irony. And I believe the ocean is kind of a reflection of that thought. Somehow, in places with no food and high pressure, creatures get bigger. And somehow, in places with no light, fish are able to create light. The ocean is truly mysterious, creepy, and if we're being honest, kind of amazing. I hope you guys loved.
I mean, a few fish that I've now learned about a little. I think I gotta say, by far, my favorite is probably the goblin shark. I don't know why, I just like the goblin shark. But yeah, other than that, that'll be a wraps for this video. Let me all know in the comment section what y'all's favorite fish was of this video, or which one scared you the most. But yeah, other than that, I appreciate y'all. Make sure to hit that subscribe, like button, notifications, so you get those notifications whenever I repost. Yeah, appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.